So with that said, we'll bring this Committee of Adjustment hearing to order. Just before we get started this evening, I'm just going to go through the committee's protocols for tonight's evening. Tonight we have 4 applications for 3 different properties that we'll be hearing, and the following will be the procedure that we're going to follow for the meeting. Copies of notices have been sent to neighboring property owners, and they've also been posted on the various application sites. The first order of business will then be to ask any members if they have any conflicts of interest with any of the applications this evening. Following that, a request will be made for deferrals and withdrawals of applications. In this particular case, if no one sent anything in advance, the first thing we'll do when we bring an applicant in, we'll ask them just to confirm. The Secretary Treasurer will then read out each application on the agenda with a brief description and staff recommendation, and include any additional correspondence that's been received since the writing of the staff report. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will be asked to introduce themselves. Again, I'll confirm that they don't want to withdraw their application or defer it. Then be afforded an opportunity to add any additional information that they wish for the committee. Members of the committee will then have the opportunity to ask the applicant any questions that they might have, followed by any members of the public who wish to respond to an application. As far as I know, this evening, no one has made request to speak to an application. Following all comments being presented, the applicant will be offered some closing comments if they so desire. The committee will then present a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. If a vote is tied, a motion will be defeated and a new motion will be made until a decision has been reached. It should be noted that notices of decision will only be provided to those persons who have left their name and addresses in writing with the Secretary Treasurer and the Planning Division Department. To get your name on that list, if you're watching at home or online, please contact David Schultz at planner@portcolborne.ca or leave a voicemail at 905-835-2901 extension 202 immediately following this meeting or first thing in the morning if you'd like to receive written notices of decision. In order to be advised of any possible local planning appeal tribunal hearings, you must request to be sent a copy of the committee's decision. So with that being said, I will ask if there's any conflicts this evening. Not seeing any, but Gary, you're okay. So Gary, you're good. If Angie does happen to join us, I will ask her at that point if there's any conflicts there. With that, is there any requests for deferrals or withdrawals that you received so far to date?
No, we haven't.
Chris or David? Thank you. So with that, Mr. Secretary, the first application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first application tonight is actually 2 applications that I will read concurrently. The first being application A10-21-PC and A11-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended and section 5.1A C, D and section 2.8.1AV of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended, and in the matter of the property legally known as Lot 32 on Plan 792 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and located in the First Density Residential Zone, Part 2 on the prepared sketch, municipally known as 144 Franklin Avenue, and in the matter of an application by the owners Dennis and Pam Roy for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13, so as to permit the construction of a proposed detached dwelling on 144 Franklin Avenue, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a minimum lot frontage of 14.47 meters be provided, whereas a minimum lot frontage of 15 meters is required for detached dwellings. 2, that a minimum lot area of 264.7 meters squared be provided, whereas a minimum lot area of 0.05 hectares is required for detached dwellings. 3, that a minimum lot frontage, a minimum front yard setback of 0.6 meters be permitted for the existing dwelling, whereas a minimum of 6.5 meters is required. 4, that a minimum side yard setback of 0.06 meters be permitted for the existing frame shed, whereas 1 meter is required for accessory structures. And 5, that a minimum rear yard setback of 0.2 meters be permitted for the existing frame shed, whereas a minimum of 1 meter is required for accessory structures. And in the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended, and Section 5.1C of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended, and in the matter of the property legally known as Lot 32 on Plan 790 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and located in the First Density Residential Zone, Part 1 on the prepared sketch, municipally known as 144 Franklin Avenue, and in the matter of an application by the owners Dennis and Pam Roy for relief from the provisions of the zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under Section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13, so as to permit the construction of a proposed detached dwelling on 144 Franklin Avenue, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a minimum lot area of 404.1 meters squared be provided, whereas a minimum lot area of 0.05 hectares is required for detached dwellings. Planning staff has reviewed the referenced applications and offered the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on March 31st, 2021, and no written correspondence has been received. And notice was circulated to the required agencies on March 31st, 2021, and the following has been received from our drainage and fire department, and that they have no concerns. Given the information in planning staff's report, planning staff recommend that application A10-21-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, it is minor in nature, as the reduction in lot frontage, lot area, and setbacks of the existing buildings are a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site, since the existing dwelling is located in a suitable location on the site, and the severance will allow underutilized land to be developed. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as detached dwellings are permitted in the R1 zone. And 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation. And planning staff recommend application A11-21-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, it is minor in nature, as the reduction in lot area is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site, since the application will allow underutilized land to be developed. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as detached dwellings are permitted in the R1 zone. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation. And that concludes the correspondence for these applications.
Thank you. Bring the applicant in, please. If you're trying to talk, you're on mute.
There you go.
There you go. Okay. We can hear you.
Thank you.
Do you have video as well or no?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We like to see faces.
I don't know why it's not showing.
If it doesn't work, that's fine too.
It does. Yes. Okay.
Oh.
How's that?
I think it's thinking about it.
It didn't work.
That's okay. Just before we get started, I'm assuming you don't wish to withdraw your application or defer your applications this evening?
Correct.
All right. So with that being said, is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
Nothing I can think of.
Okay. Is there any members of the committee that wish to ask any questions of the applicant this evening? Not seeing any. And I don't believe there is any outside parties that wish to speak to this application. So with that, I don't know if one of the committee members has a recommendation. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application A10-21PC, the matter of the property legally known as Lot 32 on Plan 792, municipally known as 144 Franklin Avenue. The minor variance application A10-21PC be granted for the following reasons. One, minor in nature, is a reduction in lot frontage, lot area, and setbacks of the existing buildings are a reasonable and measured request. Two, appropriate for the development of the site since the existing dwelling is located in a suitable location on the site. The severance will allow utilization land to be developed. Three, desirable compliance, general intent purposes, zoning bylaw, as detached dwellings are permitted in the R1 zone and reasonable and in compliance with general intent purpose of the official plan. So residential uses are permitted in the areas of urban residential designation.
You're on mute, Dan.
Sorry, did you want to move the other one at the same time, Gary?
Sure, if you give me a second, I will go to that. Thank you. Is that A11?
Correct.
Okay, let me just put the sample up here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application A1121 PC, in the matter of the property legally known as Lot 32 on Plan 792, municipally known as 144 Franklin Avenue, minor variance application B A1121 PC be granted for the following reasons. One, minor in nature, is a reduction of lot area is a reasonable and measured request. Two, appropriate for the development of the site since the application will allow underutilized land to be developed. Three, desirable in compliance with the general intent purpose. The zoning bylaws, attached dwellings are permitted in the R1 zone. Four, desirable in compliance with general intent purpose of the official plan. So residential uses are permitted in the areas of urban residential designation.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Eric, any questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't realize I didn't have to read all those conditions. I'm just looking at my yellowed part. It almost seemed like it was too little to say.
You're good. So with that, Mr. Secretary, the next application, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is application number A13-21-PC. And in the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended and section 15.5D of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the property legally known as Concession 1 Lot 12 on Plan 59R 16386 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, located in the Rural Zone, Part 2 on the proposed sketch and on the east side of Cedar Bay Road. And in the matter of an application by the agents Ann and Morgan Minor on behalf of the owner Robert Bosley for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 so as to permit the construction of a detached dwelling on the east side of Cedar Bay Road, notwithstanding the following. One, that a minimum interior side yard setback of 2 meters be provided, whereas a minimum interior side yard setback of 5 meters is required for detached dwellings. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offer the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on March 31st, 2021, and the following has been received. From a Christopher Comfort. Our concerns for the proposed building size and location on the lot are as followed. Reduced area of swale and depth of lot area will cause water built up from near of lot to not flow quickly enough and will pool at rear of property or rear of lot. By allowing a reduced minimum setback from side lot would allow others, my neighbors specifically, historical data of this pending approval to build very close to our property line or others in the neighborhood to do the same at other locations. The proposed building does not suit the other building in the neighborhood. Please note bylaw 2464-80-90. 5B, the plan must take into consideration, among other factors, the suitability of the type of building proposed for the lot. The poor ditching that has not been addressed to the south of 562 Cedar Bay Road, where the runoff from these lots will flow. We have advised these poor ditching conditions to the city for over 20 years, and they have never been addressed to our satisfaction. There's one simple solution: propose a different home design that conforms to all existing codes within the city as we did and many others also within the city of Port Colborne. Notice was also circulated to the required agencies on March 31st, and the following has been received. From our drainage superintendent, operations has no concern with regards to application A13-21-PC. However, it was recommended at the pre-consultation meeting that since the setbacks for the parcel are being altered, it is strongly recommended that a lot grading plan be required for both parcels to address the drainage. The original 5-meter side yard setback allows for drainage to dissipate. However, if the side yard setbacks are narrowed to 2 meters, as indicated, and the realization that the dwelling and septic will be raised, the runoff from the new development may negatively impact the surrounding parcels. Providing a grading plan will provide assurance that the proposed developments will not create future drainage concern. Our fire department also had no concerns. And from the region, private sewage system staff have reviewed the minor variance application for the proposed dwelling to be built on the existing vacant lot. Although the lot is narrow, there appears to be sufficient land available to support a private septic system. We therefore have no objections to the minor variance application. Please note that the septic permit application will be required prior to building permit issuance. Given the information in the planning staff report, planning staff recommend application A13-21-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, it is minor in nature as the reduction in side yard setback is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for the development of the site since the proposed dwelling and accessory building will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as single detached dwellings are permitted in the rural zone. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as residential uses are permitted in areas with the rural designation. Subject to the following condition. 1, that a lot grading plan be submitted with the building permit application to the satisfaction of the drainage superintendent and or the public works department to ensure any drainage concerns are mitigated. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Can you bring the applicant in?
Hi, sorry.
No problem. Just before we get started, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No.
Okay, thank you. And just before you get started, since Angie has joined the meeting, Angie, before we get started, you don't have any conflicts with any of the applications this evening, do you?
No, I do not. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to get in, but for one reason or another, I wasn't able to link up. So it's solved though. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. So with that, to the applicant, is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
No, I think that's clear. I think that we'll definitely take care of the drainage, obviously, and then the house that we're looking to build, it's requiring 8.9 more feet. We did require or request 2 meters, but we won't need the entire 2 meters. We just requested an extra meter to be safe.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is any members of the committee have any questions for the applicant this evening? Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a question, but not to the applicant, but to our planner. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Schultz. In the comment by Mr. Comfort, he refers to bylaw 2464-80-90. Do you have, can you provide comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard. That bylaw pertains to lot grading and to my knowledge is an engineering requirement. So I'm not sure about the contents of that or where that came from, but I would hope that engineering did look into that and do use that bylaw to review applications when they come in.
And through you, Mr. Chair, to David again, will the lot grading plan address the first point that Mr. Comfort made?
through you, Mr. Chair, if you could just give me a second to go back to that, I will, for the reduced area of the swale is what you're referring to?
Correct.
Yeah, so the lot grading plan would ensure that any drainage is not flowing onto neighboring properties. So the lot grading plan would show that if the 2 meters is suitable for that swale, if there is a swale, that the lot grading plan or whoever designs the lot grading for the site, if the swale is recommended, that it would be flowing so it stays on the property and not draining onto neighboring properties.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, I think I've seen your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Schultz. David, with respect to the bullet point and the bylaw that member Beauregard brought up, in your comments you mentioned engineering. Would they have not necessarily been circulated a comment from a neighbor and just would have commented to the entire application? I just want some clarity there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. They get circulated at the time of when the mailing notices get sent out. I believe those neighbors' comments came in today, so I don't believe they would have had a chance to review them or comment on them further.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is there any, there's no members of the public wishing to speak to this other than the correspondence that we've received to date. I guess I only have one question to the applicant is, in looking at this drawing, and my first comment was that you already have a 30-meter wide lot. To comply with the existing building envelope, you'd have a house width of 67 feet, and you have a lot that's 328 meters deep. There's no other way to configure a house on this property that can comply with, you show a little square building envelope. That may cover the side impact, but I think that building envelope can probably go not 12 meters deep, but probably 120 meters deep. I'm just wondering why you need to reduce the building envelope even further when you already have 67 feet, which is fairly significant.
Yeah, so we want to build a farmhouse, so we'd like it to be one floor. There'll just be a dormer on the top. So the house that we've chosen is 76.1 wide versus the 60, I think it's 66 that we're allowed. So the house that we had chosen, because it's gotten bedrock, we're not allowed to, well, we are allowed, but since it's on bedrock, we don't want to dig down. We don't want to build a basement because we don't want to create water issues. The builder said that if we dug into the bedrock, it could create water issues. So that's why we wanted to go a little bit wider. So that's why we're asking for the extra 8.9.
So let me ask you this. So if the property beside you develops and the sketch that we had in front of us shows the same building envelope for the neighboring property to the east, or I guess it'd be to the south, and then say, for instance, someone to the north comes along and wants to build similarly, how are you going to access your 100 and 200 plus meters behind the property? If, say, for instance, you needed to cut the land, the property, we're talking 2 meters, you're saying it might be 3 meters. That's only about 6 feet passage on the side. Then all of a sudden now you want to build a pool or something in the back. How do you access your rear yard if you've basically covered the entire width of the property with a dwelling?
Well, we would still have 33 feet on top of after the, what is it, 76. We'd have 24 feet still to access. And then to the right of us is, most of the land on the right of us is wetlands. We still have access. We would make sure that we would have access on either side, but it's wetlands with like minimal building allowance on it. And we would make sure that we positioned our house with where they're allowed to build. And then to the left side of us, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law has purchased the property. and they're going narrower, and they're going to go 2 stories instead of 1 story.
Sorry, just to clarify, you said you had how much distance to get to the back? I thought you said 20 meters, or 20 feet.
No, we'd have 3 meters on either side.
Okay, so 9 feet.
Yeah.
And like you said, and then you mentioned about the neighboring property is wetland, so no one's going to build there, but then you'd have to trespass to get onto your property at the back if you needed more than the 6 feet or 9 feet.
Well, no, we would ensure like that this is like worst case scenario. We would ensure that we would have proper space on either side to ensure that we can get to the back of the house with a riding lawnmower. We would make sure that we didn't have to trespass on anyone's property to get to the back. That's also going to have a driveway on the one side. Like we'll have a driveway, so we'll have a full driveway to access to the garage that we can also use.
So the dwelling would also have a front-facing garage access?
The garage is actually at the back, so it's like the front of the house. It's like an L shape. So the garage is at the back. So the whole left side of the property will have a driveway accessing the garage. So we'd be able to get at least 2 cars like on the side. It's including the garage and the driveway.
Yeah, I guess my initial thought was yes, one could deem it to be minor in nature, but then again, one could also consider that to be excessive. You already have what I would consider a huge width of property there, not to mention the depth of the property, that if you turned and made a house to the other, facing the other way with, or angled it or whatever, you have a huge amount of property in the back that basically, from what I can see of what the ask is here, is going to get cut off because you're only going to have potentially 6 feet on either side. I know you said that you're proposing to only have 3 meters on either side. And I guess that's where my concern is, including now the drainage. So say, for instance, you say your relative owns the property next door, and I won't dispute you on that, but what happens when they sell their property sometime down the road and you sell this property down the road, and now you got 2 dwellings that are butted almost up beside each other, and then there's this huge property in the back? I guess is my concern, because this variance does stay in perpetuity for the property, and that's really the concern that I would have going forward. The drainage issue, I guess, is a separate thing and can be addressed through the lot grading plan. But my concern is with all of a sudden they say you got to have a swale, and the swale needs to be 6 feet. You pretty much used up all that whole space to add something to it, and I guess that's where my concern is with this development. But aside from that, like I say, I'm at the will and the vote of the committee when it comes to this. But so with that, I don't know if you have anything further you'd like to add before we go to a motion.
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is someone willing to make a recommendation? Nobody wants to make a recommendation? They're all thinking now. Eric.
I have a question. So through you, Mr. Chair, to David, do you have any comments on what the chair has just stated? Like, I'm kind of having a hard time, and like the chair said, I'm just thinking about the comments that were made. So I just wonder if there's anything you can elaborate on.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So planning staff really essentially relied on engineering staff to review for the drainage concerns. That's where the most concerns we had as well at the beginning of this were with drainage. We did take a look at the area. If you go directly across the street, there's a number of homes that are built much closer than even what they're proposing in this one. Not to say that that's any justification for why the committee should approve this, but it is lending to the fact that it isn't out of the ordinary to say that it fits in the neighborhood. With respect to access to the rear of the property, I understand that there is a large area of field that would likely need to be tamed. With the variance that has been requested by the applicant, it does leave space for, if they only go with the 3-meter setback, they could shift the house to one side rather than in the middle, leaving a larger setback on one side and a reduced setback on the other side. That's just a thought. That could be something that the committee looks to add as a condition if they choose to approve it. Those are just my thoughts, but I leave it to the committee for a decision.
So with that point then, maybe I'll ask the question to the applicant. You say that you asked for the extra meter just as extra assurance. Would you be inclined to shift the building envelope all one way? So instead of 3 meters and 3 meters, if we left 2 meters on one side, 4 meters on the other side?
100%. And I didn't bring it up, but that was one of the reasons that we did ask for the 2 meters, to give us the ability to shift the house over instead of being stuck on just having 3 meters on either side. So we are 100% okay with doing that.
Would you have a recommendation whether it shifts to the north or to the south?
It would be to the right, which is the south, my husband just said.
So the south, you would prefer that it stays at the 2 meters, and then the north would be 4 meters.
Correct.
All right. I think that's a compromise, because at least at 4 meters, that gives you almost 12 feet to get by. And if you needed to get a truck or something, I think you'd be able to do that at that stage.
We could totally do that.
So with that, I'm willing to move the application A1321, unless anyone else has any questions. I don't see it. So I'll move application A1321 PC, concession 1, lot 12 on the east side of Cedar Bay Road, that the minimum interior setback of 2 meters on the, correct me if I get this wrong, on the south side be provided, whereas a minimum interior side yard setback of 5 meters is required for detached dwelling. And 2, that a minimum interior yard setback of 4 meters on the north or northerly, however you word that, be provided, whereas a minimum interior setback of 5 meters is required for detached dwelling. That minor variance A1321 PC be granted, subject to the following conditions outlined in the staff report to the committee on April 7th, 2021. That minor variance application A13 PC be granted, read that already, for the following reasons. 1, minor in nature, as the reduced side yard setback is reasonable and measured request. 2, appropriate for the development of the site, since the proposed dwelling and accessory buildings will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the single detached dwelling is permitted or are permitted on the rural zone. 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in the area of the rural designation, subject to the following condition: that a lot grading plan be submitted with the building permit application to the satisfaction of the drainage superintendent and the public works department to ensure any drainage concerns are mitigated. And I would like to also add there at the bottom there, we have a note that we typically put in there that comments were considered and the adjustments were considered based on written comments received by the public. So with that, do I have a seconder? Angie, any questions or comments? And just before we pass this, I did get the easterly or southerly and northerly sides correct.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So the southerly lot line would be the one with the reduced setback, correct?
Well, they both get reduced, but one of them
Right.
more than the other, yes.
Correct, yes. Yeah, so south would get the 2, north would get the 4. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So with that, if there's no other further questions or comments, all those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. And Mr. Secretary, the last application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last application tonight is application A14-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended and section 3.11.1A of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the property legally known as lots 3 and 4 on plan 30R15706 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and located in the downtown commercial zone, municipally known as 27 Neff Street. And in the matter of an application by the owner, Grandstone Living Inc., for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13, so as to permit the construction of a proposed 6-unit apartment on 27 Neff Street, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a minimum landscape buffer of 0.5 meters be provided for the south and east lot lines, whereas a minimum landscape buffer of 3 meters is required for parking areas with 5 to 20 parking spaces. And 2, that a minimum landscape buffer of 0 meters be provided for the west lot line, whereas a minimum landscape buffer of 3 meters is required for parking areas with 5 to 20 parking spaces. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offer the following comments. Notice was circulated on March 31st, 2021 to the public, and no written correspondence has been received. And notice was circulated to required agencies on March 31st, 2021, and the following has been received from our drainage and fire department, and that they have no concerns. Given the information provided in the planning staff's report, planning staff recommend that application A14-21-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, it is minor in nature as the reduction in landscape buffers is a reasonable and measured request and will help facilitate the development. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site since the proposed apartment building and parking area will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as apartment buildings are permitted in the downtown commercial zone. And 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as residential uses are permitted in areas with the downtown commercial designation. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. If we can bring in the applicant.
You guys see me?
We can.
Perfect.
Welcome. Just before you get started, you don't wish to withdraw your application or defer it this evening?
I do not.
Perfect. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
I think David covered it pretty good.
All right. Thank you. Is there any members that have any questions for the applicant this evening? Not seeing any. And again, I'll just confirm we don't have any requests to speak to this application this evening.
Yes, that's correct.
Very good. So with that, does anyone have a recommendation? Eric?
In application A14-21-PC, lots 3 and 4 municipally known as 27 Neff Street be granted for the following reasons. 1, it's minor in nature as the reduction in landscape buffers is a reasonable and measured request and will help facilitate the development. 2, it's appropriate for development of the site since the proposed apartment building and parking area will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as apartment buildings are permitted in the downtown commercial zone. 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as residential uses are permitted in areas with the downtown commercial designation. No oral or written comments from the public were received.
Thank you. Seconder to that, Angie, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Be carried. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
You too. All right. The second to last issue, is there any other business from anyone? Not Gary.
Not really business, but nice catch on that. Cedar Bay Road. I thought that was very astute, and I think everybody won, but did not catch that myself. And I think it was good for the neighbor and good for the people. So just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you. Any other business? All right, moving to the minutes of the March 10th committee. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Angie, Eric, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Be carried. And motion to adjourn. Oh, I didn't think it. I thought you guys want to stay here all night. Gary and Eric, all those in favor? That'll be carried. Thanks, everyone, and we'll do it again next month.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
See you later.